Mr. President, from Cordon, we go to Gordon. I move that we recognize Senator Richard Gordon to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would first of all like to congratulate and ask for order and quiet so that we can properly honor the Daibutsu of the Philippine Senate. And I say that in jest, but in reality, it is out of just to get the attention of the body towards this very important award for Senate President Trillanes, and I congratulate him as a friend, as a legislator, and certainly that has brought, this has brought honor to our country. Mr.
Thank
President,
you very much, Senator Gordon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. President, I rise today on a question of national public interest. Mr. President, in Central Luzon, including Manila, if you will, we have 3 international airports. You have the Manila International Airport, or the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. You have Diosdado Macapagal International Airport, and then you have the Subic International Airport, Mr. President. Having said that, I dare to say that we have let grass grow under our feet. Tumubo po ang damo sa ilalim ng tinatapakan natin, sapagkat on that historic day, on 16 September 1991, the Senate of this country rejected the basis agreement. That created a time clock that would tick and make sure that we are able to proposition our alternatives dito sa mga iwanan ng Amerikano. Having said that, Mr. President, there was a national responsibility and duty on the part of this country to see to it that we do not get considerable embarrassment, especially with what happened with the debacle in Clarkfield at the height of Pinatubo. It was pillage and rob by departing American soldiers, so they say, and some of our countrymen. Fearful of that, Mr. President, the people of Olongapo, who are from all over the country, because Olongapo is a hodgepodge community coming from the north, the south, and even in Mindanao, Mr. President, the volunteers of Subic made immediate preparations. We started out with 8,000, ended up with about 28,000 people who cut grass in homes that do not belong to them, guarded the airport, ran the power system for a while, and at the same time made sure that we maintain our dignity as a country. A lot of expectations were on our shoulders. After all, the Americans were very upset at their losing their premier base. It was an $8 billion facility. You will recall, Mr. President, that that occurred in September 1991 on the 16th day. In about 2 days, Mr. President, we will have the 24th anniversary of the turnover of the first half of Subic Bay, which will culminate on the 24th of November on the whole turnover of the American facility to the Philippines. The former Senate President and current chair right now is aware of that event because yours truly was appointed by the President of the Philippines to handle the transition of the facilities as mayor of Olongapo. Thank you very much for your kind comments. I still look young. And I will not, yeah, and that was many pounds ago. So statements emanating from NB can be reserved later on. Having said that, Mr. President, you can see the picture with Ambassador Solomon on the first half of the turnover. And let me just say, we were so fearful at that time that it was going to be another missed opportunity. After all, this country lost many opportunities in the past. We had a railroad built in 1896. that stretch all the way from Manila all the way to the Mortis in the north, and the railroad from Manila all the way to Bicol. Mr. President, after all, after the war, we were second only to Japan in terms of economic might. After all, Mr. President, at that time, the Philippines had the highest literacy rate in Asia. After all, Mr. President, we had an air force that we sent even to the Congo under the auspices of the United Nations, our Sabre jets, in the early 50s. But alas, in spite of our protestations that when the Navy leaves, or the U.S. Navy leaves, our Air Force will become all air and no force. I can remember people were looking at me and saying I was pro-American. But I was really thinking of the many Filipinos who were not faceless, who had families, who were going to lose their income, their ability to send their children to school. They had to make, preparations so that their children will eat 3 square meals a day. And all of a sudden, after Pinatubo, a year after, there was nothing but bleakness in the future. Well, to a certain extent, fearful of that experience, for example, of Sangley Point, which was turned over in 1971, there were promises of a pre-port, of a seaport and an airport in Sangley Point, which did not materialize. It became a Philippine base. When we took over the reins of Subic in September of 1996, therefore, of 1991, therefore, 1992, I'm sorry, we were very perturbed. But with the firm vision and the commitment of many thousands of volunteers, we were able to protect and preserve the facility to prosper. One of the facilities in that base, which constituted $8 billion worth of American infrastructure that was left behind, was the QB Airport. That was then called Admiral Radford's Folly. It was a folly on the part of the Americans because they said they were going to move more earth than they move in the Panama Canal. Giniba nila yung bundok para magawa ng airfield. That made the base even more robust in terms of strategic interest of both the United States, perhaps more so for the United States than the Philippines. But when the turnover occurred, Mr. President, we started out like a house on fire. We had Coastal Petroleum come in right away. They took over all the tanks that became a strategic, reserve for the Philippines. That gave us, I think, 26 days of supply of oil, so that in case there was an embargo, we could still survive for 26 days, an additional 26 days. We took over the power plant and we gave it to what was then a robust company called Enron. And right away, in less than a year, we had a power plant that was built in Subic Bay, creating jobs. The people who volunteered were absorbed by these companies, and rightly so. Soon there were other companies that came in. The Taiwanese came in. Conferee from the Georgetown Leadership Seminar, at that time as Secretary of Economic Affairs of Taiwan, the name of Vincent Hsu. Later on he would become Deputy Prime Minister of Taiwan. He right away committed to this representation 300 hectares. Later on, that 300 hectares would become, the site for the biggest Acer company outside Taiwan. Later on, Hitachi would be there, and many other companies would come in there. But then we were also, after developing the port, that's another story, another speech, but I will concentrate on the airport. At that time, Mr. President, it was crucial for us to move tourism in. And we did bring in the tourists, domestic tourism at first. Eventually, we were tested in the airport. Sometime in about 1991 or 1992 or 93, suddenly a plane crashed on the tarmac of the Manila International Airport, or the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. And at that time, I had a guest named Governor Chris Patton. And we were in the Officers Club overlooking, nakikita namin yung airport runway. And sabi niya, Dick, can your airport bring in 747. Sabi ko, Governor, it is like kaitak. And in fact, I was surprised. In fact, right now, there is a 747 plane landing. Wow, I said, this is my lucky day. And then all of a sudden, a few minutes later, another 747 landed. All told, that day, about 14 flights of 747s and DC-10s landed in Subic, because the whole slew of airplanes coming in from abroad were diverted to Subic. I can tell you, we were not prepared. We had no airport terminal. It was a very small one. But again, the Filipino volunteer through authority came over there. We picked up suitcases. We borrowed buses from Victory Line. And we brought them to the various barracks that were abandoned by the Americans that were manned then by volunteers. All told, we avoided a debacle that could have really embarrassed us. And in fact, we said we were just volunteers, and many of them understood. Having said that, that gave us the impetus to try and get a big fish on the line. I tried DHL, they were not listening. I tried UPS, they were not listening. And then I remembered a fellow by the name of Fred Smith, who owns FedEx at that time, said, I was told that he was a shore patrolman that served in Subic as a U.S. Marine officer. And so we launched our fishing line, and we brought in FedEx. We got Mr. Fred Smith to come down. He's a legend in business schools all throughout the United States of America. And he saw the potential of the airport right away. And at that time, I did a little dog and pony show. I drove for him. I was riding my car, and he was in the front seat, and I was showing him the sights. And he said, can that runway handle FedEx? And I said, why don't you get off the car, and see that guy over there? He used to work for the U.S. Navy, and talk to him. His name is Felix Visay. And Mr. Felix Visay is still alive, and he talked, and when he came back, Dick, where do I sign the dotted line? And I said, we are ready, anytime you're ready. And indeed, I went right back to the World Bank, borrowed the money, and we started, reconverging or refitting the runway that was built for fighter jets that was now going to tackle heavy laden aircraft. And indeed, we did. In 29 weeks, the airport was finished, including a brand new airport terminal that was made ready for APEC. We were getting lucky. We were on a roll. President Ramos had announced that APEC was going to be here, so we said, can you handle it, Dick? And I said, we can. The volunteers will. And a former jet plane hangar was transformed into a spanking, really nice, shiny international airport terminal that was good for 700 passengers at any time. Mr. President, at that time also we started bringing in chartered flights from Taiwan, from Malaysia, and from Hong Kong, some of whom you can see in the presentation. Grand Air, Dragon Air, Air Asia, which was then owned by the father of Sherwin, our senator here, and we brought them in at various times. We were running 26 flights a week at that time. I was very careful lest I mentioned Congressman Villanueva, who is supposed to be the TESDA king. Yesterday I mentioned him as William Gatchalian, and he was protesting that he has now become the plastics king, not the TESDA king. And I was very careful that I would not refer to him as TESDA quid, TESDA man. And I just promoted you. Anyway, to make a long story short, Mr. President, we immediately were able to haul in the Philippine Airlines inaugural flight from the United States of America. President Ramos landed there, and immediately Subic was in business. A few months later, we would bring in our first FedEx plane. Can you imagine? We had 18 flights a night, Mr. President, of 747s and DC-10s. Something that amazed the whole world, and I was very, very proud of the volunteers at that time. And so, Mr. President, years went on. It was how to is the next Hong Kong. We were being covered by the economists and everywhere, and I was very proud of our country. Certainly, sometimes I'd speak with tears in my eyes because of the sacrifices that resulted in the success that made it all possible. Transformation of Subic was underway. Finally, we had done something right. Unfortunately, after sudden twist of events, suddenly FedEx left. I was no longer chairman, and out of respect, I went there to bid them goodbye. Mr. President, at that time, when we got FedEx, let me just say that we put in an ASR-9 radar. It did not have a radar. It was the first-class radar. We had an ILS, Mr. President, that was brought in. We had an ALS. Some of that equipment can be seen on the slide projection if my people can just follow through. This was the equipment that was placed there. All told, we spent $31 million from the World Bank and another $12 million for a total of $43 million. And it's there right there. And we were able to pay off that liability after several years, Mr. President. The airport was making money. Unfortunately, we lost it, and this is why I'm standing here today. We not lost only the airport or FedEx. Nobody bothered anymore to promote Subic as an airport. The charter flights stopped for some reason. You know, FedEx uses as Asia One hub. It was the #1 hub of FedEx abroad, outside of the continental United States. We were picking cargo from all over the world. They were bringing it there to distribute to Asia and bringing cargo all over the world as well, coming from the different areas in Asia. It was the logistics hub. It was happening. When they left, Mr. President, like I said, no more aircraft landed in Subic, and today, the only aircraft that was landing there are flights of Indian pilots training in Cessna flights. What a shame, Mr. President. Now, that is not the whole story. Never mind the $8 billion left by the Americans. Never mind the almost $45 billion saved. Never mind the sacrifices of the many people who worked Subic Bay or the volunteers from universities all over the world at master's degree and volunteered in Subic. But, Mr. President, NLEX was built for Mariveles and has been enhanced ever since. Later on, they would have the Olongapo-Gapan Highway. Later on, we would have Tiplex. So there was a slew of infrastructure programs being introduced in the billions of pesos, Mr. President. Now, tanong ko po sa inyo, nakinabang po ba ang Pilipino dyan? O nga, nakakapunta sa Maynila mas mabilis, kaya siguro kargado tayo sa traffic ngayon. Kaliwat kanan ang traffic natin. Nakadagdag ba sa hanap buhay sa Central Luzon? Wala po. The combination of infrastructure and the two airports of Clark and Subic, close by Manila, that's 3 airports, and a slew of highways that have created an economic boom that would have really made magic for the Philippines at the time. Worse, Mr. President, nawala yung ASR radar, costing almost $6 million. Nawala yung ILS. Kinanibanay, binigay iba sa Maynila. Wala ngayong lumalanding sa Subic. Merong investor doon na sumulat sa akin at nagsabi, you ask us to come here and we cannot use the airport. We want to fix planes here, but they cannot land. They are told they cannot land, Mr. President. In fact, when I landed there the first time, I was coming by helicopter, it was nighttime, and an American was operating the communications lines because they had no tower communications. And I said, ba't ganon? Eh, wala na ho tayo. Sabi ng piloto, wala na hong communications dito. Wala na tayong mga gamit dyan sa Subic Bay. What a shame! To quote somebody, nakakahiya. Here we go again. Now, we can add Subic in the highway of missed opportunities that this country has become famous for. And Clark, hey, wait a minute. Clark had 2 runways, Don't forget, Clark, they probably had more billions invested by the Americans. Ano nangyari? Ginawang Diosdado Macapagal International Airport. Okay lang yun. Pero pag nagkaroon ng problema sa Clark, sa Maynila, dadalhin yung airport, yung mga aeroplano doon. My God, Mr. President, friends of mine from Qatar wrote me that they were there for 9 hours inside the aircraft. 9 hours! Oh my gosh, as if we did that, we needed that like a hole in the head, Mr. President. Reputational damage, big time. Not to mention the fact that even a former Undersecretary of Tourism, Oscar Palabiab, because it was raining in Manila, they were diverted to Manila International, to Clark International Airport. They could not even be diverted to Subic anymore. Naipit rin sila. Many periodicals, I didn't have time. I just realized it was almost the 25th year. That's why I stood up today. And as you notice, I'm not reading my speech here because it's coming from the heart and my mind. From hard-earned experience, Mr. President, my father never taught me sayang. Kasi, kung, that's not in our vocabulary. I was schooled in that by my parents. We did something about Subic. The people did something about Subic. Pero ano nangyari? Why? Why kayod? Why kaon? Sabi ng Bisaya. Pero ano nangyari dito? Wala talaga. Walang bagong development. At ano nangyayari? Swertehan na lang. Mabuti na ang Ayala ngayon. Nagtatayo doon sa yung Antapora. At bakit mo tatayo? Na-realize nila may airport palang malapit dito. Maganda pala yung highway dito. Kaya pala natin labanan ng Hong Kong. Kaya natin labanan ng Singapore. Kaitak is no longer Kaitak. They call it by a different name now. Chaplacot, if I'm not mistaken. Chaplacot, yeah? I forgot the name. But they're building another airport in Hong Kong. Singapore continues to rebuild this airport. Singapore, kasi laki lang na Subic, has the #1 airport in the world. It's one of the best airlines in the world. Singapore Airlines. A small city-state. If we all decided to relieve ourselves, and I told them that, when they hang Contemplacion, sabi ko, yabang-yabang yung mga Singaporeans, kung sabay-sabay kaming iihi, malulunod kayong lahat, ganyan kaliit yung bayan na yan. And it was quoted. And they even pilloried me for that. Well, that's a fact, Mr. President. Nakakahiya talaga tayo. And so having said that, Mr. President, we are once again at crossroads. We let the grass grow underneath our feet. Worse, may kasabihan sa Latin, if I remember my Latin correctly, ovam lupo committere. You let the wolf come into the sheep. The sheep farm. Parang pinapasok mo yung sawa para linggisin yung mga manok sa manukan. And that has been happening, Mr. President. Talagang nakakahiya. Hindi ko masabing sayang, ay bawal eh. Nakakahiya because we are supposed to live by the potential that God has given us. We're supposed to be made into God's image and we have the free will to do what is right. But apparently we're guilty of complacency. Walang pakialam, okay lang, talagang ganyan, wala tayong magagawa. That's in our vocabulary. But to do something about it is far from our mindset, Mr. President. Talagang dapat magising na tayo at sampalin tayong magdamag, baka sakaling makaramdam tayo ng konti. We laugh about it, we raise our eyebrows, but what are we going to do about it? I would like to investigate, not to go after people because of malfeasance, misfeasance, and non-feasance. Magkamali ho ata yung mga kasama natin sa Senado, binigay sa akin yung blue ribbon. But I accepted it without lobbying, but far be it from my mind to say I am not going to investigate and hold people responsible for it. Not because I want to, but because I want to be responsible, like all of us here, to make sure na mga kababayan natin ay magkaroon ng choice. What is poverty, Mr. President? When Pinatubo happened, may mga ita sa bundok, sabi sa akin, pwede ko hubang ibaba itong mga bamboo slats. Sabi ko, wag na, babayaran ko na lang. Ito lang ka, babayaran ko na lang. Hindi tayo kakasa sa 3 truck na dala ko sa taas ng Pinatubo. I defined poverty at that time as an absence of choice. We are leaders and we're supposed to create choices for our people. We give choices to them when we give them better education. We give choices to them when the Department of Trade and all our attaches all over the world and all our public officials, including all of us here, when we go out, we try to get investments para magkaroon ng trabaho ang mga kababayan natin. That is choice, Mr. President. And yet today, walang choice. Walang choice mag-endo. Walang choice. Kaya, Mr. President, I would like to say here today that 24 years ago, we closed the chapter on Subic, the first half. November 24, in a few months from now, we'll be celebrating the 24th anniversary of the completion of the turnover. Next year, we'll be celebrating the Silver Jubilee, 25th anniversary. Are we going to see, again, a speech by this representation to say, nothing happened? We have all the infrastructure there. May inggit lahat. Karsada. There are several senators here from Central Luzon. Senator Villanueva. Senator Angara from Aurora. Senator Bamakino. Senator Pangilinan. And yours truly, Mr. President. Surely we can do something about making Central Luzon and Northern Luzon a bright spot and a bright future for our people in our country. Surely we can do better than investigating all the extrajudicial killings. Surely we should have time for this little things called employment generation, of investment generation, of opportunity building. Surely, Mr. President, we're capable of being active participants, like the lowly volunteer who made the future his friend, Felix Visay. I use this as an example. He lost his job, he stayed in the airport, and he convinced Fred Smith to commit to put Subic there. Well, we lost that opportunity. I can talk about another lost opportunity, but now is not the time. But, Mr. President, I call upon the members of this chamber to make sure that never again that we must be watchful. We must open our eyes. We must be analytical, not just for the scandalous, because the profane, because the scandalous things are more interesting to those who sell media, who pander towards suffering, because they sell newspapers, radio, and TV, and that is not a slight upon the media. That is the nature of the beast. But surely we can try and pan the camera into something where people do something right for a change. That is why in Subic we put up, nakalimutan na lahat, bago ako umalis, I put up a marble monument for all the 28,000 volunteers. There you go. So that today when somebody dies, they go there and put a flower, because there were those, sabi nga sa Castilla, at kukunti lang Castilla, alam ko, no todos dormían en la noche de nuestros abuelos. There were those who kept vigil in the night of our forefathers. And they did. We owe them, Mr. President. They're not faceless. They're not nameless. And we owe our progeny. We owe our people a future. Let us all make the future our friend. Join me as we open this can of worms and not come out with just negativisms, but find a way to put it in the budget. And I appeal to my good friend, Lauren Legarda, to try and find a way to bring in the budget so that they can build it. My goodness, Mr. President, they even gave, because of Senator Trillanes' proposal that all these government corporations should provide dividends to the country. Well, they did, 185 million in dividends. The SBMA budget is 1.5 billion, Mr. President. Ano ang kapalit doon sa trabaho? Yung ba lamang ay para maitaas sa sweldo ng mga tao natin? Ako po, on record, ang kailangan po natin, hindi lang growth. Ngunit jobs. Hindi lang jobs. We want well-paying jobs. Hindi ando. Hindi yung kung na lang itapon. Kakagatin. Para ba yung kasabihan natin sa Tagalog, isang kahig, isang tuka. Tumutuka ng tumutuka. Yung manok, hindi tinitignan ng parating na kinabukasan. Kaya isang araw, hihilahin na lang siya sa kanyang leg and his neck will be cut off para magkaroon ng pagkain ng ibang mga tao. We cannot do that all the time, Mr. President. So today, Mr. President, I appeal to the Chair and to the Senate. I know all of you, I have no doubt about that, are well-meaning, you're patriots, you love our country, and you will put country before self. I pray, and I want to believe that, and I believe that. I have no reason to doubt. And therefore, Mr. President, I make this appeal before you today, otherwise, we will again have another missed opportunity that adds to a country of nasadlak sa dusa. So I close. You've heard me say this before. I've said this many times. I quote Waldo Emerson when he said, "Not gold, but only men can make nations great and strong. Men who for truth and honor's sake stand fast and suffer long. Brave men who work while others sleep. Men who dare while others shy. They build a nation's pillars deep and lift them to the skies." Thank you very much for your patience, and God bless the Republic of the Philippines to our country. Mr.
Thank you
President,
very much, Senator Gordon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. President, I rise today on a question of national public interest. Mr. President, in Central Luzon, including Manila, if you will, we have 3 international airports. You have the Manila International Airport, or the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. You have Diosdado Macapagal International Airport, and then you have the Subic International Airport, Mr. President. Having said that, I dare to say that we have let grass grow under our feet. Tumubo po, we're on our shoulders. After all, the Americans were very upset at their losing their premier base. It was an $8 billion facility. You will recall, Mr. President, that occurred in September 1991 on the 16th day. In about 2 days, Mr. President, we will have the 24th anniversary of the turnover of the first half of Subic Bay, which will culminate on the 24th of November on the whole turnover of the American facility to the Philippines. The former Senate President and current chair right now is aware of that event because ang damo sa ilalim ng tinatapakan natin sapagkat on that historic day, on 16 September 1991, the Senate of this country rejected the basis agreement. That created a time clock that would tick and make sure that we are able to proposition our alternatives dito sa mga iwanan ng Amerikano. Having said that, Mr. President, there was a national responsibility and duty on the part of this country to see to it that we do not get considerable embarrassment, especially with what happened with the debacle in Clarkfield at the height of Pinatubo. It was pillage and rob by departing American soldiers, so they say, and some of our countrymen. Fearful of that, Mr. President, the people of Olongapo who are from all over the country, because Olongapo is a hodgepodge community coming from the north, the south, and even in Mindanao, Mr. President, the volunteers of Subic made immediate preparations. We started out with 8,000 ended up with about 28,000 people who cut grass in homes that do not belong to them, guarded the airport, ran the power system for a while, and at the same time made sure that we maintain our dignity as a country. A lot of expectations.
Mr. President, from Cordon, we go to Gordon. I move that we recognize Senator Richard Gordon to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would first of all like to congratulate and ask for order and quiet so that we can properly honor the Daibutsu of the Philippine Senate. And I say that in jest, but in reality, it is out of just to get the attention of the body towards this very important award for Senate President Trillanes, and I congratulate him as a friend, as a legislator, and certainly that has brought, this has brought honor